Retail or service workers of Reddit. What's the best instant karma you've seen happen to a rude customer? Story 1. I worked for an online banking help desk and this 18-year-old lad phoned up saying he had seen a transaction for £7 to allpay.net, and because he didn't recognize it, he decided the bank was robbing him of £7 and that I was in on it, and I was a thieving little prick. Then he gets his dad on the phone who stuck up for his son, saying I was a pathetic scumbag for stealing £7 off an 18-year-old boy. Even though it was a debit card transaction and I simply worked in the department which helped people use online banking. But anyway, I phoned our debit card services to see if they could give any more information. And boy, could they. I then had the pleasure of relaying back to this little boy's equally crappy father the following. Hi sir, thank you for holding. I've checked with our debit card services team and I now understand why your son would not have recognized the payee allpay.net. That's a deliberately vague term used for discretion when the customer has subscribed to online pornography. That's what it was for. Your son has been paying for online pornography. Would you like to pop him back on the phone so I can tell him it's a payment for his pornography, or will you pass on the information? The father just muttered that the issue did not require any further investigation, thanked me for looking into it, and hung up. Story 2. Worked at a telecom in Canada. I'm no longer an employee, thank God. Lady comes in with a broken iPhone and is demanding to get a new one for free. If you don't know, in Canada, the iPhone 6s is going for about $400 upfront and a 2-year contract at a minimum $80 plan. She had a good plan but wanted it for free. She called up her loyalty team in the store and spent the next 2 hours screaming at them. Finally, they agreed to a deal, and she's getting it for $0. She looks at me and goes, I do not want a case and Apple Care is a scam. We work on commission, so this essentially meant I was getting nothing and ruining my numbers. She keeps telling me to hurry up through the setup, and I was trying to get them out of the store with everything transferred over and set up. She grabs the phone and starts marching off saying I was a terrible employee. She gets 3 steps out of the store and drops the phone. Shattered screen and white screen of death. She ran back in asking what I can do. I shrugged and went, sorry, but Apple Care sure would have helped, eh? Story 3. Warehouse worker here. Customers have to show a card to shop, and even though we're not technically a grocery store, we don't allow pets. One dude tried to power walk past the employee at the entrance door holding a big pit bull puppy on a leash. We stopped him and told him he couldn't bring his dog inside, and he lost it. He's our best customer and he's here 5 times a week and he owns stock. Blah, whatever. He demands to know why we don't allow dogs. We explained how it's a food safety issue, especially with an untrained puppy. At this point, our manager came over and just waved him through, because no backbone customers are always right. Well, not even 5 minutes later, this dog squats in the middle of the main aisle and pees, followed by poop. The man turned so red and dragged the dog towards the exit, abandoning his groceries. We stopped him and asked him nicely to please clean up after his pup. That's the reason we don't allow them, sir. Story 4. Worked at Best Buy 10 or so years ago. This happened on Black Friday. Most of the customers were in bad mood since they'd been waiting hours to come in and stand in more lines. But this one lady was a raging witch. After yelling at everyone in my department about how she needed the laptop that was on sale, despite it being sold out, she proceeds to tell us she'll have the store closed down because she works with the city and knows the fire marshal and we have too many people in the store. So she calls him, we tell her to leave, and nothing happens to the store. However, we called them as well to report what she'd said, and she got fired from her job for abuse of power. Story 5. I worked at a restaurant that was very popular for brunch, and Mother's Day was probably our busiest day of the year. I had a customer call the evening before and ask for a table for 6, and he was incredibly rude when I informed him that this would simply be an impossibility. He kept getting more and more worked up, asking me to speak to my manager. At first, I didn't want to pass the phone over. My manager wasn't the nicest guy and we were in the middle of a busy dinner shift, but my manager came up behind me and demanded to know why I had been on the phone for so long. I was like, screw it, this customer isn't going to listen to me anyways, and gave the phone to Mac. Mac asked how he could help and listened for about 15 seconds before telling this dude something like, so you're tying up my hostess in the middle of dinner, even though she's already told you nicely that we can't fit you and your goddamn family in the night before our busiest day of the year? Screw you, buddy. And hung up the phone. Story 6. I'm not sure if being a public defender counts as a retail or service worker, but considering that I provide criminal defense to indigent clients facing deprivation of their rights and freedom, I'll consider it service nonetheless. I was representing a scumbag client who was a massive meth-head who got high and beat the hell out of her 8-year-old daughter with a belt after she accidentally broke mommy's meth pipe. She was charged with child cruelty and possession of meth, and given her criminal record, the district attorney's plea offer was 3 years of prison. Needless to say, my client didn't want to go to prison for giving that cunt what she deserved, and started freaking out at me when I told her that was the best offer I was going to get from the DA, and it was either accept that offer or go to trial. I further pointed out the mountain of evidence against her, primarily the photographs of her daughter's injuries, the bloody belt that was recovered from her bedroom, the broken pipe with residue in it, and the fact that her daughter was going to testify against her at trial. After she was done cursing me out, calling me a public pretender, and every other derogatory name she could think of, she fired me and somehow managed to hire a private attorney for the low price of $8,000. I still don't know how she managed to come up with that, but I have plenty of reliable guesses. The private attorney guaranteed her that he could win her case at trial, and that's exactly what she chose to do. Long story short, the private attorney clearly never even read this woman's file before trial. The trial lasted roughly 3 hours, the jury was literally out for only 5 minutes, and the judge sentenced her to 10 years of prison. It was a good day. Story 7. More than a few decades ago, I worked at Denny's. I had 2 male customers that decided to dine and dash, got their license plate number and reported it to the cops and jokingly mentioned that they didn't even tip. Later that night, they got pulled over for DUI. Cops recognized the license plate number from the report, brought them both back to the restaurant, and forced them to pay the bill. After he was done paying, the cop just stood there and looked at them and said, "Well?" The guy sheepishly handed me my tip. Story 8. It wasn't the customer, it was the manager. She was awful. She was rude, intentionally picked out favorites and gave them presents in front of everyone, even when they didn't like her and tried to avoid it, messed up schedules on purpose for people she didn't like, etc., etc. Worst manager ever. So there was a huge storm coming, and people were really worried about it. Like the news telling people to stay home, other businesses closing, etc. So it was up to her to either keep our store open or close it. Of course she kept it open. Because schools closed, only half our scheduled employees showed up, the rest called in, and she called her favorites and told them they didn't have to come in. Well, as the 5 of us showed up, we're standing there, watching out the front windows, there were 0 customers. She starts yelling at us, threatening to write us all up, etc. And we're like, no one is here. All the work is done. We're watching the wind bend trees over and worried about if we're safe or we'll be able to get home. Right about this time, we hear a super loud crashing noise. Ka-chunk, 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 wham, as the industrial air conditioner on top of the building got blown off as it rolled along the roof, then went flying into the parking lot, right onto her car. It was so perfect, it was surreal. Dead center, smashed her car flat. Like, if she'd been in it, she would have died. And it only happened because she parked right up by the building, where we had specifically been told not to park. All her cars were out in the farthest corner of the lot. We later found out her car wasn't paid off. It was some stupidly expensive BMW or something, and her insurance didn't cover the damage because it was an act of God. Story 9. As a teenager, I was working part-time at a convenience store. I was being trained by the late-night cashier. This dude comes in and grabs a bunch of cans of vegetables and such, and comes to the counter and stacks the cans in a very specific way, like a weird kind of pyramid in the counter. As the experienced cashier, my trainer, takes each can off the pyramid and rings it up, she reaches the end of the stack and we realize that the weirdo has his cock out and has it laying on the counter behind the cans. Without saying a word, the trainer grabs one of the big heavy metal cans of beans and slams it down as hard as she can on the guy's dick. He screamed an incredible scream of searing pain, grabbed his cock, and ran out of the store. She, to me, calmly, "You get all kinds in the late shift." Story 10. Let me preface my story by saying I work near Baltimore. Yeah, so I manage a plus-size women's clothing store. We actually get a surprising amount of, let's call them non-traditional customers. Guys who need to dress for a charity show, cross-dressers, gender-fluid people, transgender women, and drag queens aren't unheard of. So a drag queen comes into the store to pick up some shoes they ordered online. They must have been either coming from or going to a show because they were still in full makeup. I get their name, and during our conversation, another customer walks in. I call out a greeting and say something like, "I'll be right with you." I go to the back room and it takes a minute to go through all the web orders. I find the one I need and I'm on my way back to the counter when the new customer throws her arm out to stop me from passing. She then says, "I'm a new customer and I've been here for 20 minutes and no one has spoken to me." A, I greeted her when she came in, and B, she had only been in the store for 5 minutes at that point. I resigned myself to groveling, but before I could say anything, the drag queen stomps over, glared at the customer, and says, "Which, we said hello to you," complete with sassy finger snaps. The queen then made a big show of thanking me for getting her package and gave me a big sparkly kiss on the cheek before she left. The other customer sheepishly paid for her Spanx and didn't make eye contact when I told her to have a good day. Story 11. Former cell phone industry worker. We have to pitch insurance and a case every time you get a new phone. We have to. You can actually be fired from some carriers for refusing to partake in making these suggestions. During a normal new line setup, this insanely rude woman is hostile about every part of the exchange. Her credit is absolute dog poop, so she has to pay a gnarly deposit and more of the phone up front, and that's somehow my fault. Finalizing everything before she's completely rung up, I casually offer the same thing I do to literally everyone getting a new phone. Which insurance plan were you interested in? And what kind of cases have you looked at? Apparently, that was the most offensive thing she'd ever heard in her life. She immediately raises her voice and makes it really uncomfortable for me because apparently, I'm only accusing her of being clumsy since she's black. And I didn't charge her white friend nearly as much and I'm just a racist, blah blah. Super fun. I kept my composure and tried calmly explaining everything, even trying to let her know that I have to offer that to everyone and I couldn't get anything across. Eventually, my coworker lets me know that he's got this, and we swap places and finish each other's sales. As she steps out of the store, looking down at the Galaxy Note 3 she had just spent a total of $500-something to get, she trips, eats crap, and smashes the screen. Comes back in asking for help after raising hell, and we got to be all, eh. Story 12. I was a server during college at an upper-scale restaurant. I rarely had problems with customers and am overall genuinely friendly. I had a table for 4 with only 3 patrons there, an older couple with their adult daughter. I served them beverages and was told we were to wait for patron number 4, the son. About 40 minutes and 2 refills go by. I say, I bet you guys are starving by now. Would you like me to bring you our lettuce wraps? They're small enough to not ruin your appetite. Or are we still waiting for my buddy? Father said, we're going to wait, and he isn't your buddy. Frankly, you don't know him. He's a hardworking man and will be respected. You're right, sir. Forgive me. He actually has a real job. I understand, sir. It won't happen again. When I come back for refill number 3, the son was arriving. The son happened to be an old high school friend. Before taking a seat, he gave me a hug right in front of his dad. I looked at the father and said, small world, huh? I can't believe you're my old buddy, name's family. I'm surprised we've never met before with name and I spending so much time together in high school. It's too bad a restaurant didn't serve crow. Story 13. I worked in this fancy clothing store in this posh town at the seaside. It was a busy Saturday when suddenly, a very pretentious girl walked in with her boyfriend, ignoring us all as we greeted her and even giving my colleague a demeaning look. She went on to browse around in the store and eventually took some clothes with her to the changing booth. After a while, I noticed a heated conversation arising from the booth between her and her boyfriend. I see the boyfriend running back and forth between the booth and some clothing racks. In the meanwhile, me and my colleague was being chased away by her. She refused any help and didn't leave the booth, as if we were a couple of Ebola patients. So me and my colleague continue working and helping other customers. I was working the register when suddenly the girl turns up next to me, completely pissed off, and she starts ranting about how our store and brand really should work on the fitting of her clothes and how we were complete screw-ups. I was completely caught off guard, and right when I wanted to ask her what the exact problem was, I see my colleague looking at the girl while bursting out this horribly loud laugh, tears and all. What had happened was that the girl had taken with her a clothing piece she thought was a strapless dress. Well, it wasn't a dress, it was a skirt. The girl had tried on all sizes and got completely fed up, yelling at us and her boyfriend because the freaking dress won't fit. So she walked out in a crowded store making a scene with a skirt pulled up to her tits. I have to admit, after she left, I laughed till crying. Story 14. I was working at a restaurant and there was this family who were extremely trashy and didn't look like they had a lot of money despite ordering a bunch of expensive steaks and drinking a bunch of drinks. They were rude the whole time, treating me like I was their butler or slave, then asked for a manager to tell the manager that their steaks tasted rotten after they finished, and their drinks didn't taste like they had any alcohol in them. Again, finished. Just trying to get free food. My manager noticed the way they were treating me and knew they were full of crap and refused to comp their meal like they were demanding. They began yelling and cussing at him and me and ended up trying to leave without paying, only to have their car not start in the parking lot, and my manager called the police and one of them got arrested for disorderly conduct and possession, and the rest ended up walking after having their car towed. Story 15. Dave politely quit so he could knock a racist customer out with a single punch. It was about 3 years ago. An employee, we'll call him Dave, was working at my retail store when 2 customers walk in at about the same time, one black, one white. Dave was being trained on the register. After being there for only a month or so with the manager standing behind him, the 2 customers get to the register at about the same time, but the black man beat him there. The black man then has the audacity to ask how good the product was before he bought it. The white man behind him said, "Do I really have to wait for this freaking N-word to be done?" The black man was unfazed, but Dave said, Sir, please don't use slurs like that or I'm going to have to ask you to leave. White man. Oh, big man. Are you going to make me leave, big man? Because I called this N-word a freaking N-word? Dave, 6'5". Yes, I am a big man, and you have to leave now. White man. Freaking fight me then, big man. I'll freaking destroy you. Dave. Alright, I will. Let me clock out and grab my stuff and I'll meet you outside. The white man was a little surprised by the fact that he accepted. Dave turned to the manager and said, Thank you so much for the opportunity, but I'm afraid I have to quit. Manager. Dave, I get it, but you don't have to do this. Dave. Yes, I do. The white man was getting himself pumped up outside as Dave clocked out, grabbed his coat and his Pepsi, and walked outside where he sucker punched the white man in the cheekbone, sprawling him out onto the curb. Dave drove off. Story 16. Worked for a sushi bar for a few years. They do a half-price sushi hour most weekdays for dine-in customers. It's a good deal, especially for how high quality the food is. It was an especially busy day. People waiting, etc. This woman and her daughter come in and stress that they are in a hurry. My daughter has cheerleading, but want the half price. Good luck. Full house, but whatever. Customers equals money, yo. So the lady gets angry when her food takes longer than 15 minutes. She asks if she can get her food to go, and then I explain that the food would then be fully priced. We get into an argument. She's getting angry and beginning to yell at me in front of her embarrassed daughter while I'm meekly standing there, unsure of what to do. Well, I ordered dine-in. You were asking to go. It doesn't matter if you were sitting at a table while asking. She's getting louder and more annoying, and I'm starting to panic. My anxiety was really bad at the time, when suddenly my boss chimes in. And by chimes in, I mean she started ripping this woman a new one. You see, my old boss just happened to be working behind the sushi bar that summer. She told the woman to stop yelling at me and that if she wanted her damn half-price sushi, she would have to sit and wait like everyone else. Boss apologized to the other customers and made sure I was okay. Lady was shocked and now super embarrassed since the entire restaurant was now judging her. She quietly sat and waited for her sushi. The daughter apologized to me and that table ended up leaving a good tip. My old boss is the nicest woman in the world. She still gives me free food whenever I go up for some sushi. She also has a bunch of regulars who she always makes time for. But don't piss her off, because she will become a scary, scary person in mere seconds. Story 17. I used to be a nighttime manager at a pizza place downtown. We were literally around the corner from a direct competitor. They had a carry-out window and offered that service all night. We did not, and closed their doors at 10 and only offered delivery service after that. It's worth mentioning that we were quite friendly with a local PD, and they frequently sat in our parking lot at night to catch up on paperwork, watch for drunk drivers, etc. One night at about 11:30, I had a woman and a man start banging on our door. I politely, but loudly, told them through the door we closed to carry out at 10. The woman goes ballistic and starts screaming and hitting the door, while the man just stands there watching, trying to look hard. I ask another employee to keep an eye on me in case the situation escalates and step out another side door, in order to be able to actually converse with him. This woman is absolutely nuclear at this point, screaming and cussing. I let her finish and I inform her that if she called and ordered, it was probably our friendly neighbors with a carry-out window. I get accused of calling her stupid and ask her to check her phone and tell me which number she called. She says, I don't have to. I know I call y'all and you took my order. At this point, I informed her that there's absolutely no way I took a carry-out order after we closed the carry-out. At this point, the man joins in and starts taking a very aggressive posture and tone with me and informs me I better let them in and get their food. I flat out said no. At this point, the man shoves me and I stumble back about 3 feet. He goes to swing at me and misses, and I kindly repay the favor and connect, knocking him on the ground. At about the same time, the woman attempts to rush me. There's a sound of whoop whoop and then flashing blue lights behind them. This doesn't stop them from continuing to try to assault me. However, the 2 uniformed police officers that happen to have just pulled in take care of that very quickly. Another squad car shows up. The 2 have been cuffed and placed in the cars. The officers have given a copy of the security footage, and I asked the officer I'm talking to if, for the sake of curiosity, he could possibly try to convince her to tell him the phone number she called. He walks me back out to the car she's in and somehow convinces her to do this. She recites the number while glaring at me, with so much vitriol and hatred in her voice. XXX, XXX, 7272, you stupid freaking honky. I smile at her and inform her, our number is XXX, XXX, 3030. We are Domino's. That's the number for Papa John's. That's why 7272 spells out Papa. Story 18. Standing at the counter of the pizza place I work at. Lady storms in and slams a pizza down on the counter. "This isn't the freaking pizza I ordered. What the hell are you going to do about it?" she asked. I look at the pizza, then at my buddy Nick, and turn back to her and say, "Nothing." She then goes on a long rant telling how we're going to be fired and how stupid and incompetent we were. She actually told me I must be retarded, then asked why the hell we weren't going to do anything. I said, "Because that pizza came from the pizza shop across the street." I think she actually managed to shrink in size and slink out looking so pathetic and beaten, I almost felt bad for laughing till tears dripped down my face as she slunk off. Story 19. Working at the window at McDonald's late at night. Guy orders whatever and pulls up to the window. I'm cooking and handling the window, so I wasn't there when the customer pulled up. When I walked up to the window, I didn't see the freak with trash in his lap. I opened the window to take his card or cash, and he throws a bag of trash at me. I take a step back, bothered that it just got trash thrown at me, and I watch his car speed off. I'm pissed, but there's nothing I can do. A couple of seconds later, I hear a small bang of metal on metal. I walk to the lobby and look out the windows. The douchebag slammed into a police cruiser that was about to loop around and use the drive-thru himself. Of course, I also went to tell the officer what just happened inside. Story 20. I work at an auto parts store. This one guy stole some $60 headlights and literally sprinted out the door. We went to look outside and to try and get his license plate, just in time to see him speed off, hit a curb, and blow out his tire. Called the cops and the dumbass got arrested and had to have his car towed. That's just glorious. I got a justice boner.